Do people that support MAGA call themselves maggots? Just a thought. Hi everyone, my name is Katie, and you're listening to KT, where I dive into politics. Just kidding, this episode is supposed to be fun. Since the inauguration of our next president is coming up, I decided that I would make my first episode somewhat related to it. I won't be getting political or talking about the election because, frankly, I hear about it too much, and you all deserve a break from the news right now. I don't feel confident in keeping you guys politically informed, so please get your information elsewhere. But stick around here first, because I have a lot to say. That being said, I'm here today to talk about some of the things I would do if I were president, including policies, but more importantly, fun things I would implement. But before I begin, welcome to my first ever episode of KT. I'm so excited to finally put my voice out there and share my stories with you. I hope all of you who are listening enjoy the ride. Anyways, let's get into it. First thing I would do if I were elected president would be to throw a party. I'm inviting all of my friends over, and we're playing Mario Party. I'm playing the Star Spangled Banner on one of my saxophones off my balcony. I'm going online shopping for White House decor. The next day, I'll find pictures of my friends and family to frame in the White House. Or I'm scheduling with the photographer ASAP. I want everyone I love to be framed on the walls of the White House. I will be living there, after all. I'll admit, I haven't done much research, but if there isn't a music room in the White House now, there will be. I'm bringing all of my instruments to the White House, which isn't much now, but I'll get more. Since my salary will be a nice chunk of change, especially compared to what I make now, I'll probably buy all of my instruments in one brand and color, most likely gold. I prefer silver jewelry, but I favor gold instruments. Although I do love silver mellophones, I will, however, leave my instruments for another episode. So stay tuned. Actually, why should I stop at a music room? I'll make one of the rooms a recording studio. That way I can still work on my podcast. In fact, I could make an editing suite and keep uploading videos to my YouTube channel, which, if you're not subscribed, you should be. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a president who vlogged every week? I would be the first president that went to school for film. I think I should use my power for good. I'll hire camera operators to follow myself and my bodyguards. I think we as the public don't really understand what the president does or what being president actually looks like, myself included. So being in on some of the behind the scenes of the job could really benefit us, somehow. Of course, I'm sure some things would have to stay private, but the tapes can be erased. Footage can be edited. At some point soon after I'm elected, I'll make a speech in my hometown and thank everyone who voted for me. Of course, I'll make plenty of speeches all over the country, but politicians don't usually come to my town. They'd rather go to the state capitals instead. But I would be the exception. Also, I would have maximum security at my speeches. There would be no way that I would be shot. What would my policies be, you may ask? Well, for starters, I believe in equality for all. I've always believed that. So I will do my best to make sure discrimination is punished. I think our nation has a problem with racism in the police force, so something will be arranged to fix that. Keep in mind that I'm a film major, so I don't know what would have to happen and how to achieve it. This is just for fun, after all. I also believe that love is love. Love knows no gender, so in every state, same-sex marriage will be legal. Why should the government be in charge of who you're allowed to marry? Of course, this is to an extent. This is only on the basis of gender, not age. I will not condone any adults marrying minors. Another policy I will implement is ensuring trans people will have access to the things they need to make them comfortable in their skin. I don't think anyone should have to live with gender dysphoria. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But there are so many trans people committing suicide because they couldn't transition for any reason, and that number should be 0. It will be when I'm president. That's the plan. I'd also like to mention women's health care. I believe it's the choice of the woman to decide what happens to her pregnancy. Why should the decision be in the hands of another person, let alone the government? I've always said that if I wanted the government in my body, I'd sleep with a senator. So, we could even get some population control if we let women who don't want kids to terminate their pregnancies. We don't really have enough resources to sustain ourselves as it is, right? Also, I think it's important in any medical emergency for women to have the care they need in all cases. In addition, I would like to cure cancer. Some people believe that treating cancer is too profitable to be cured, and even if that was true, the profit doesn't matter. One of my good friends passed away to leukemia, and I miss him so much. I would do anything to have him back. We don't think of cancer like we should. It should be on the news more often. But since it's an ongoing problem, it's not reported on enough. On that note, I want affordable healthcare for all Americans. If it can be free, that's even better. Why should people die because they can't afford what they need? Many people insist on not riding in an ambulance or even going to the hospital at all because it's too expensive for them. Related to healthcare, our nation is having a mental health crisis. Many people are committing suicide because they couldn't get the help they needed. What do I plan to do about that as president? First of all, I'd get better training for the suicide hotline representatives. Many people who have called the suicide hotline have reported that they are left on hold for a long time, and the representatives aren't very helpful. Now, that isn't to say none of them are helpful, but we need more of them and more training. Second, an increase in mental health resources and to eliminate the stigma of going to therapy. Because there's a good chance that you're going to therapy because the other people in your life who need it aren't going. Now that I've gone through some of my political policies, I'd like to talk about the fun things I would implement. First off, we used to have 24-hour Walmarts and McChickens for $1. We had it made. I'd like to bring those back. Last time I checked, a McChicken in New York City costs $5. I checked over a year ago, but my point still stands. When I was writing my script, I asked my younger brother what he would do if he was the president, and his response was to bring back the dollar menu. So I guess we're more related than we think. My point is, inflation is too much for me as a college student, and frankly, for everyone that isn't a billionaire. On that note, billionaires shouldn't exist. Once a person reaches $1 billion, every cent over that goes to curing cancer or something that benefits the country. It could feed the homeless. It could be donated to military veterans. It could even be used to build a dog park. But you cannot be a billionaire and have made every dollar in a humane way. Therefore, they don't need all that money. $1 billion is still high. If I was actually the president, I would set a lower number. But for the sake of this episode, $1 billion seems fair. Another fun thing I'd like to do is have 3-day weekends every weekend. I've read somewhere that we need 3-day weekends to recharge. One day can be spent catching up on errands or necessary tasks. One day recharging and doing absolutely nothing, bed rotting, if you will. And one day to do something fun. Even having 3 days off instead of the 3-day weekend would benefit us. Humans weren't made to work. They were made to frolic. They were made to enjoy themselves. I don't know a single person that would rather have a shorter weekend, even people who love what they do. I hope to find a full-time job that I feel that way about post-graduation. Good luck to me, I guess. If I was the president, I'd like to adopt cats to live in the White House. I'd bring my cat, but I'm nowhere near 35, so he won't live long enough to see me get elected. Speaking of age, I'm definitely putting an age cap on politicians, the cabinet, everything. We don't need dinosaurs in the White House that won't be around to face the consequences of their actions. Also, no felons in the White House. You know, I heard they're not having tours for students because the people in the White House aren't allowed around children. I hope you found that as funny as I did. That wouldn't be a problem if I were the president. Just a thought. Back to fun stuff. I would be in charge of decorating the White House for holidays, and I wouldn't just stop at Easter and Christmas. Christians aren't the only people with holidays. I would also raise the wages for servers so they aren't only depending on tips. Also, I think happy hour should apply to every restaurant and be for multiple hours. Maybe I'm onto something, or maybe I'm just hungry. Possibly both. For those of you who are interested in me discussing politicians, I will actually dive into them really quickly, just in maybe a disappointing way to you. This episode is not sponsored, but I wanted to talk about one of my favorite YouTube channels that is somewhat, but not really, related to politics. I figured I'd never get a chance to talk about this otherwise because of how niche it is, so I'm going to do that now. The channel is called President's Play. If you haven't heard of it, it uses AI-generated voices for Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, and George W. Bush, and they play Wii games together. My favorite series within the channel is the Mario Wii series, but I also enjoy the Wii Sports videos. I think the creator of this channel did a great job with the dialogue and includes humorous references to different events and makes stabs at each other. And the dynamic between the characters seems realistic, and I find the channel very enjoyable. If I'm not listening to music, you'll often find me with a President's Play video in the background while I'm working on something. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode of KT. If you're interested in getting updates and behind-the-scenes content, go ahead and follow KT Podcast on Instagram. That's Kaetea Podcast. I also take episode suggestions. You can leave them in my DMs or feel free to comment them on any of my posts. And with that, I'm Katie, and this is KT. Thanks for listening, and I hope you tune into the next one.